Do I need to say that over again? Welcome. Melissa.
Madam Chair, while Melissa's coming, if I may, I just want to say thanks to Melissa and her staff for the hard work they put into the budget. We certainly hope it reflects your wishes and intents of the board as we move forward. They've done what I think is a wonderful job of putting a plan together. So we hope you'll find it, again, that meets your expectations and provides the services for the citizens of the county the way you would be pleased with.
Good morning. Since I've already met with each of you individually,
Melissa, will you just state I know Dory knows it, but will you state your name for the record?
Melissa Thomas and OMB. I'll just go through a brief overview. That way we can get to any items that the board would like to discuss in detail. This current budget draft was prepared with no increase in the current countywide millage rate of 3.6363 mills and no increase in the North Walton mosquito control millage rate of 0.4912 mills. And I just wanted to remind everyone within these budget workshops today and Monday, a proposed millage rate will need to be determined by the board. And I wanted to remind everyone that after these workshops, that rate that's determined, it can go down, but it cannot go up. And just to give you a few of the highlights, there is a 3% cost of living increase that's included in the proposed budget for county employees. The Sheriff's Office has been budgeted to receive 1.9482 mills. This is the same millage allocation that was allocated to the sheriff in fiscal year 15 and 16. So we've kept that in the draft for 17. And any type of pay increases for Sheriff's Office employees would be assumed to come out of that increase. In the current draft, the health insurance increase of 5.5%, it has been fully absorbed by the board for all the county employees and constitutional offices. This worked using the current estimated ad valorem revenues and other sources of revenue. So we went ahead in the draft and put that, let the board absorb that increase. And I do want to note that if the board does this, the piece that would still go up for employees, if they have the prescription drug piece that is kind of 100% paid by the employees, that would go up the 5.5%. I just wanted to note that is a cost that the employee would bear. But the regular insurance, that increase has been in the draft included to be absorbed by the board. We've included $100,000 for coastal dune lake monitoring and management, $250,000 for continuing document scanning to convert records to an electronic format, $300,000 to begin conversion to a new financial system software. This is something I wanted to note because it is anticipated to cost about $1 million. Most of that will be in fiscal year 18 when the lease on the current system expires. The $300,000 really gets us in a position to get started with that. We're not sure what will happen with the current records that are scanned into the RVI system, if we'll have to convert them to something else. This provides a mechanism to go ahead and start the process of conversion, but that is coming up. The overall FTE increase requested is 35.5 FTEs. 28.5 of those are board FTEs and 7 are for constitutional offices. And the only constitutional office that has an increase in this draft is the sheriff. He's requested 6 additional deputies and 1 school resource officer. The school resource officer, he is approaching the school board about funding that. So the FTE is included in this, but any increase budget-wise, we would have a corresponding revenue coming for that. So it would not increase the board's allocation to the sheriff's office. The clerk's office has requested 2 additional internal auditors. This is not included in the current draft. The clerk's office, the clerk and the finance director are both out of town, so they're not here today to discuss this addition. They'll be on Monday's workshop to discuss this. The planning positions are the ones that have been previously approved by the board during the current year. They did request one additional position for a planning assistant. We have not included that in this draft of the budget. We're anticipating that the TDC will begin processing the wedding and special events permits, and that would alleviate some of the work that would currently fall on a planning assistant. Fire Rescue has requested 5 FTEs for engine staffing to get all stations to the minimum recommended staffing level of 2 firefighters per engine. Admin has added 1 position to assist with IT needs. You'll notice that the board has gone down a position. In past years, the board funded a Council on Aging clerk, and that was a grant match, and that has gone away. That grant that was received by Council on Aging is gone, so the match would also go with it, so that position has been eliminated. Many of the TDC positions have already been approved by the board. Out of the 16.5 positions, the BCC has approved the Director of Community Information, the Assistant Project Manager, the 3 beach operations positions, and 2 code enforcement officers during the current year. The code and 2 of the beach ops FTEs were conversions of temporary positions to full-time FTEs. So the additional positions TDC is requesting include a content curator, and I had spoken to them about this. This position can better be described as a social media coordinator, and they would also handle information for the TDC's website. Currently, this is a task that's being performed both internally, it's being piecemeal by internal staff and also by the external consultants. And this would just allow 1 person to coordinate this and handle all the information that's going out on social media and on the website. They've also got a 1/2 an FTE for an information specialist, 3 beach operations positions, 1 beach ambassador, and 4 code enforcement related positions. That's 2 code officers, a code administrative assistant, and 1 permit clerk. The tax collector's proposed budget, I want to note that's just estimated based on a 3% increase. Their budget is not due until August 1st, so just for planning purposes, what we're showing is an estimate that has just been based on trends for other departments. You'll notice a decrease in the property appraiser's budget. They're required to get aerial photos done every few years. These were in last year's budget and have been removed from this year, so that contributed to their decrease. When you get to the board departments, most of the increases that you're going to see are related to the proposed COLA and the health insurance increases. We're also seeing increases in technology and communications costs. We've been expecting those, and most likely those will just continue to rise a little bit each year. The statutory required contributions we're able to let those remain the same for next year in the budget. Medicaid's going to go up slightly, but current year expenses were a little bit less than we anticipated, so we've been able to leave the budget for those constant for next year. The human resources budget included a replacement vehicle. Their current van is unreliable. Overall, the county still has a few vehicles left. They have quite a few vehicles left in the fleet that are around 10 years old, and we're just continuing to replace those as the maintenance cost and vehicle downtime justifies the expense. Section 8 housing anticipates an increase in funding for vouchers next year. You'll see a decrease in the MSBUs related to Imperial Lakes. The original loan funded and paid by that MSBU will be paid off at the end of this year, so it'll be going away. North Walton Fire Rescue, they have those 5 positions for engine staffing we described earlier. We also recommend converting 11 current positions to station lieutenants, and the cost of this has been included in the requested budget. Also, we have included the purchase of 2 new ambulances just as a part of the normal vehicle rotation and 1 tanker. And so the budget includes the first year's lease payments for those vehicles. The 911 fund consists of the 911 fees collected by the state and remitted to the county to fund the 911 program. We used to just put these these would go straight into the sheriff's office budget, but the state last year began requiring us to put them into a separate fund. So now we put them in the 911 fund. They transfer over to the sheriff's budget to support the 911 program. The planning budget does include those 6 positions that the board has previously approved. Also, we've included $125,000 for new software, $25,000 for a water supply work plan update, $250,000 to continue the LDC update, and $25,000 for a replacement vehicle. For Public Works, other than the cost of living increase and the health insurance increase, their budget includes a $600,000 increase in the road materials budget and $300,000 for work required by the DEP at Oyster Lake. And this draft will also keep Public Works on an equipment rotation. We've still got a lot of old equipment we're trying to cycle out. The goal's been to get them back on just a normal rotation and realize that we can't do it all in one year. So this year's capital equipment budget of just over $2 million includes 5 graders, 1 backhoe, 1 dozer, and 2 service trucks. We've got 1 FTE in the Public Works budget for a staff and projects engineer to be utilized primarily for additional projects that are coming up in the south end. Also, as part of the normal equipment rotation, the Facilities and Parks budget includes $175,000 for a replacement bucket truck. A large part of the landfill's increase can be attributed to higher sales tax collections, which is allowing additional funding for road and bridge construction to be transferred. It's going straight over to Public Works. The increase in the TDC budget can be attributed primarily to the increase in positions described earlier and an increase in beach operations budget for safety and infrastructure improvements to the accesses for boardwalks and beach accesses, and additional equipment for the new beach operations positions. They're trying to move away from trucks and get more towards the UTVs with a lighter footprint. The increase in the state attorney's office budget is related to increased communications that office anticipates. The local option gas tax fund increase, it can really be attributed to Love's Truck Stop. In a time we keep hearing that fuel revenues are going down, Love's Truck Stop has come in and that has increased the gas tax revenues that we're seeing. And those funds also, they're going straight over to the Road and Bridge Fund for road and bridge construction. The Capital Projects Fund contains the payment on the capital projects line of credit. And we've also included the same amount in the TIF fund that we had in the current year. It's just over $3 million. And I did want to note something that I was looking at last night. The 331 TIF area, it did have a very slight property value increase over the base year. And I was reading the ordinance last night and realized that unless action is taken by the board to indicate to do otherwise, $756 will start the TIF fund in next year. And we've got a revenue. We've got a revenue summary that just it gives you the detail on the taxes and other major sources of revenues. We've got the proposed ad valorem allocation percentages, and these are basically the same that they are in the current fiscal year. There were not any big changes to the allocation, mostly because we did leave the sheriff at the same actual millage allocation, the number, and so that kept the percentage the same on his, and the others really did not change significantly. And the good news was we did have an over 11% increase in taxable property values, so revenues have been ticking up. We're still, you can see by the chart, we're still coming up out of the down years. We're back to about the 2009 levels. The budget's continuing to replace aging equipment. It has looked good this year. We're still coming back from it, but we have been able to meet a lot of the needs to keep providing services. Those graders that were budgeted for Public Works, they're 10 years old, so we are able to replace those. The bucket truck that we're replacing, it's replacing a 1998 vehicle that was actually purchased used. So it is equipment that needs to be on a rotation, and the current budget's allowing us to take care of those needs. We do have aging facilities, so we do have money. We've got funding in the budget to keep maintaining those facilities. And we've been able to prepare this draft with the understanding that everything can't be done in one year. And we've tried to focus on any increases in the budget going towards improving services. So if there are any items that you would like to discuss in more detail, we'd be
I'd
happy to
like to.
discuss those.
Bill, you want to go first, and then I'll.
Well, I've got a quick question. First of all, I'd like to echo Larry's comments about thank you for the hard work that went into putting this together. Last year, we had talked about trying to get a situation where for employees, there could be some merit pay increases. And is there any in there, any provision for that?
What we've got in there now is just an across-the-board 3% COLA, but that just really gives us an amount in the budget. We can structure it in any way that the board would like. For example, if the board would like a 2% COLA and a 2% merit, that would work out to roughly the same dollars that are in
But
there.
we'll need that for September, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What does the 3%? What does the 3% COLA? What dollar value does that have?
It was about $700,000.
Okay.
And that's for the board employees. Anything for the sheriff would be assumed to just come out of their allocation, so I don't have a number on that.
Okay.
Well, I know last year, didn't we, y'all refresh my memory, we did like a 3% for someone making a certain amount and under, and was it 2% over?
We did stagger it, yes, ma'am.
We did stagger it because of, I learn every day, let me take that back since I have been in office, but I have learned very recently how dedicated our county employees are to this county, to the people of this county. Let me tell you what, they step up and do what's needed to be done, and they don't gripe. What would be the difference? I mean, I know there's going to be a difference between a 3% COLA and a 5%.
The 5%, if the 3 is $700,000, then the 5 would be closer to $1 million, probably a little over that.
Could we do that?
If the board wishes to work it
No,
out.
I mean, you know, could we, I mean, they have had, for years they didn't have any COLA at all, nothing. And then last year we gave them a 3. And I don't know, I was in the grocery store yesterday and I was astounded, you know. I don't buy milk, and I bought a gallon of milk, and it's like, holy moly, you know. Would it be possible, ladies and gentlemen, could we give our employees a 5%?
Madam Chair, could I recommend that while you're
Yeah.
throwing those numbers out, and again, they're going to bring it back
Yeah,
in September.
we're
but
going to
that-
bring it back,
that-
yeah.
and not necessarily making everything a 5% COLA, but to include money for merit pay. I mean, in baseball terms, not everybody's a 300 hitter,
Right?
but they're still pulling their weight, so we need to take care of the people that have gone above and beyond instead of just a COLA. So I'd like to see them come back in September with some recommendations that would include your concern for making sure that there's an appropriate COLA, but also my concerns that there's a merit pay for those that are deserving.
And the only thing with merit pay, we have to impress upon our directors and our supervisors and that sort of thing. They're going to have to be, and it is difficult, they're going to have to be honest when they come to evaluating employees. It's a whole lot easier just to say, gee, Fred was wonderful, you know, because it's easier because you got to look Fred in the face. But if Tom was better, you know, so if we're going to do merit, and I certainly am not opposed to merit at all, then supervisors and directors are going to have to step up to the plate and evaluate people honestly, you know.
Right. And if they haven't been doing that, I know LMA showed me a program that's in place that we could document and do, you know. So if they have not been doing that, I don't know how we could do a merit pay. But if they have documented and they can show that this person is doing exemplary service, then I would be in favor of that. And, you know, I really would like to see if we can manage the 5%. Our staff really, I had one come over to my office over the weekend to help me. Well, actually 4th of July. So they really do go above and beyond their call.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll name names. Jerry Slay was out at 8 o'clock on the 4th of July when I got there on his bicycle, so he must live close. And that man was putting out garbage cans, doing whatever. He apparently went home, realized the garbage cans were blowing over. He went and made sacks with sand in them, brought them back, put them in the trash cans to keep them from falling over. He didn't have to do that. That's called a dedicated employee.
Do those employees that work overtime, they get overtime pay, don't they?
I don't know whether he got overtime or not, or whether he just did it. I don't know.
Yeah, because I talked to a couple of people, and they said, yeah, if they do extra things, they get overtime pay. So they are paid overtime. I kind of agree with Bill here.
I don't think there was enough overtime pay Monday to make it worth it.
I think we need to look at that as well. I have a couple questions from TDC, but in the interim, on the discretionary contributions, I would like to see, we have formed Coastal Seniors, and I'd like to ask that we put in the same amount, $12,938, in that account that we do the senior center, and that will give us some seed money to kind of get started. So I would like to add that same amount and call it Coastal Seniors.
Okay. And I will note that the discretionary contributions, we've left those right now at the same rate for 2016, and the $12,938 is what is in there for the for the Defuniak Senior Center.
Right. Okay.
We need motions for that, Mark, or we just add it. Yeah.
Okay, I have some questions about the TDC. Okay, the additional new positions requested for 17 are, okay, right now, how many code enforcement, TDC code enforcement officers do we have now?
We currently have 5.
We have 5, okay.
Well,
And
actually, let me just step back. One will be starting this coming week, and then
Okay.
the other will be starting week after next. But we will have 5.
So we will have 5 code enforcement officers for the beach. And then you're asking for another code enforcement officer, is that correct?
Correct.
So that would be 6, plus 1 would be 6. And then you're asking for a lead code enforcement officer. Is there already a lead, or is that somebody?
Actually, that's incorrect. That is Jeff McVeigh's position, so that is incorrect. We are not asking for a lead code enforcement officer.
Okay, so we can cross that out?
Correct.
Okay, so just a code enforcement. Okay, then a code enforcement admin assistant,
Yes,
that's one.
that's an additional position. We're trying to free up some time for Jeff because he's getting inundated with administrative type stuff.
Right.
And Jeff, I think he can kind of split his duties a little bit between the office and being out in the field. But just in his position, I'd like to see him out in the field just so he still has that representation of being out there
Right.
and then managing. But I think some of the administrative things he's doing can be passed off to an administrative assistant.
Okay, and then beach operations, tech, specialist facilities maintenance, and that's 3. Tell me exactly what that would be.
Okay, so we're looking for beach specialists. They're the folks who pick up the garbage off the beach. So we're looking actually for 2 for that position. And then actually instead of 3, we're actually looking for 4 for the beach maintenance side. And the beach maintenance, we want to dedicate those 2 individuals to the bike path. So those individuals would be year-long maintaining that, working on that when we have issues, kind of almost like a public's work type role, but for the TDC specifically to the bike path.
Okay, so now, I'm sorry, say that over. So beach operations, you're asking for, that whole line there, you're asking for 4 people?
For 4 people, correct.
Instead of 3, okay.
Instead of 3.
So beach operations, so 2 specialists, and then 2 people.
Facilities maintenance.
Facilities
And I'll just step back real quick and just tell you about the specialists. So right now we have 2 crews. And on those crews, we have 9 individuals. We have a crew leader, and then we have 8 staff members that work with that crew leader.
Okay.
So we'd like to increase each crew by 1 person and balance the crews out so we have 10 individuals on each crew.
Okay. Let me ask you this, too. The bike path, we pay, or y'all pay, somebody, I think, $200,000 a year to maintain that bike path.
Correct.
Now, would this be duplicative of that?
It would
or-
not, ma'am. It is, what we're paying for right now is basically cutting the grass, cleaning up in that respect. And so what Brian and I are proposing is to have people who are dedicated to a maintenance from a infrastructure standpoint. So if bridges need to be, some minor repairs that we don't need to go outside and hire a contractor to do, we can do that ourselves. Kind of like we do with our beach access points. We maintain those during kind of the off-season.
Okay.
And just with the bike path as big as it is, we really could use individuals to do that.
Okay, and this would be the same bike path that y'all are maintaining, the same
Correct.
number, the same amounts of, okay.
Correct.
And then when you've got people out there picking up, I think, what I'm seeing is not only do we need people picking up trash from the garbage cans, we need people picking up trash from the beach. And so I'd like to see that somehow worked into TDC's scheme of things, because I think you drive down, you pick up the garbage, that's great, but the amount of garbage that people are leaving on the beach is just astounding.
I agree. I think that is something we need to address, and I've had conversations with a couple of the commissioners on that. And I think in addition to that is maybe having some sort of response mechanism if the garbage cans are overflowing in one area or another. Maybe we can and we have to look at how we have our crews structured, but maybe we can send somebody to respond to that. And as of right now, the way we're structured, it would be difficult because our guys are tasked with kind of moving down the beach in a structured way of picking up the garbage. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think we definitely need to do that because sometimes they're overflowing and we got to get back to them, and that presents a challenge for us.
Yeah, is there a way that you could get either volunteers or some kind of group to, like they do the Turtle Watch, they walk the beaches. These people would walk the beaches and pick up the trash, like Adopt a Mile or a volunteer group or somebody to do that, because it's just, it needs to be clean, and right now it's just not happening.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, Brian and I are talking about that to see if we can create a volunteer program kind of for that aspect of it as far as beach cleanup, but then also almost like a junior ambassador program where people can be there to help the beach ambassadors that we have, and obviously we have one now, and John does a good job, but we need to expand that because it is a great role. It's kind of a cross between that code enforcement and beach ambassador, which I think is good for the visitor experience. It's somebody who, might be handing out a football, but then also of, oh, hey, you know what, you can't have glass on the beach, you need to get rid of that. And just, it's a little bit of a proactive approach than code enforcement, where it's, they're coming down the beach and it's like, okay, you can't have glass on the beach, I'm going to write your citation.
Right, exactly. So you have one beach ambassador now, and you're asking for another one, correct?
Correct.
And then the permit clerk is going to be the person who is going to take over the permitting.
Right, we've been talking about transitioning over from planning to TDC, that permitting process, and that position would help with that. And actually what we'd like to do is the permitting clerk and the code enforcement administrative assistant, we'd like to cross-train those individuals. So if someone's on vacation or sick, they'll know each other's jobs, and they'll have some overlap there.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Information specialist, that's that's the person who works at the
And actually, that position, we don't need that position.
Don't need
We just
that one
filled
either?
that 4 months ago. That's Gay's position. So
and then the content curator is actually a social media.
I think that's a better term for it. Content curator is kind of a nebulous term. It's like, what is that? But looking for somebody to really help us with our social media. Right now, it is being rotated amongst 4 individuals in the marketing and communications department, and Zinder is also helping with that.
Right.
So I think it'd be beneficial to move forward that position
Yes.
and hire it. Question?
Will the amount we pay Zinder go down?
It should.
It should a little bit
they're
because
doing that by hourly.
Because they charge us by an hourly rate for that. So the work they're doing for that,
I would
that should
expect
come
that to
out of
go
that.
down.
What's that?
Yeah.
Also,
I had one
too.
other- I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. I have one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I met with a group. They're a 501c3. They're called Friends of South Walton Turtles, and they've put together an elaborate education program on their own with funding from various and sundry things. I would like to see the TDC fund $130,000 to get those turtle. They have turtle placemats. They put in restaurants. They have turtle, and what's happening is, if you get the kids on board, you get the parents on board, and they're dealing with filling in the holes. It's not leave no trace, but it's another thing. I don't know if you've met with them or not, but I would really like to see y'all fund next year $130,000, because based on what they said, they could reach all the rental agencies, all the restaurants, all the businesses, all the schools, and they do an incredible job. So
I'd be happy to talk to them.
Okay, I would like to see that added into your budget. And that's
Cindy,
all I
it's kind
have.
of like, remember whenever they started in the schools, the no smoking? And every kid,
Yeah, yeah.
you started in elementary
Yeah.
school, and every kid went home and said, Mom
Yeah.
and Daddy, you shouldn't smoke.
Yeah.
And it has made a huge difference, because we started with elementary children, so
And that's what's happening. And most of these
that's a
people
good
are
idea.
most of these people are they're all volunteers. They've gotten this started on their own. They funded it on their own, and they have put together a really impressive program. So I'm really would like to see that happen. But
I'd like to see more code enforcement officers. You say you're going to have a total of 5 code enforcement officers?
Right now, we have 5. We'll have 5 as of next week.
Those 5 can't work 24 hours a day. And we have people that are misbehaving on the beach at night. And if we're going to enforce, take your sign down, then we need people out there enforcing it. We're not, and we do get criticized, and rightly so. We pass something that we don't enforce. So, I mean, I'm for at least, I don't know, I'll throw a number out here, at least three more code enforcement officers that can stagger and maybe work at night sometimes, patrolling that beach, And I know the fire
agree.
department's job is about the fire, but they don't often
Bonfires.
go down there.
The bonfires,
We need
yeah.
our people down there saying, you've got to put that fire out. You can't have, champagne glasses with your wedding here on,
what
I
would
think
you
we need more
yeah.
code enforcement officers.
What would you suggest is needed for code enforcement? Because I'm with Sarah. I think if we added the one that we've got here, that would make 6. I would say, 10 would be
I'm thinking 10.
I think with the way we have it with the schedule, I think staggering, I think we could do 8 to 10. We can certainly do 10. That would certainly help out in the evenings, because right now we don't really have that. So I think that's something that we could certainly work on.
In the off-season, we can find something for these people to do.
We absolutely can.
I
we absolutely can.
We can find something for them to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Madam Chair and Commissioners and Jay, Jay and I've had some preliminary discussions, and we've spoke to this with probably each of you, but we're working together to look at a beach experience department division, and certainly with Jay's leadership, to address a number of the things that have come up. And I know you and I've had the conversation. I certainly think that the more people you can get down there to help manage that experience is going to be a better
We're going to
experience.
have to have it, yeah.
And so, if it's okay with Jay, we'll take what you've heard, what you've mentioned, and kind of roll it into our discussions and kind of bring you back a more polished project that will include a number of the things we've talked about here. Was that sound
I
reasonable?
think that's good. Because
You need to hire a director for that. You've got, we crossed out director of community, then we do it. We do what's necessary. Let's don't piecemeal it, and let's don't shortchange it. Let's do what's necessary to get the job done.
And I'd like to see the job description more of an ambassador/code officer. You need to, not have glass. You need to make sure you fill your holes up, that kind of thing.
Right.
And do they ride on, how do they get around the ambassadors?
the ambassadors, right now, John has a little ATV cart that he goes out on, so it's much smaller that he can traverse the beach. Code enforcement officers, depending on the time of year, they'll use their trucks or they'll use ATVs, just depending on the people on the beach, because sometimes they just can't get through in their trucks.
I think we need to look at there again, ATV. Man, I'm spending money. I think we need to look at ATVs rather than trucks. I saw a picture recently. I don't know where, somebody sent it to me. And those deep ruts from those trucks, that's the first thing I saw before I saw whatever it was they were trying to show me. I saw those deep tracks. So smaller vehicles, easier to maintain, probably cost less in the long run than big vehicles that we need to look at buying. We
And
buy
especially
what's
at night,
necessary.
it's tough to be out there at night. You can't see. You can't really see where you're going. They could work hand in hand with the sheriff's office if there's something happened that they saw on the beach that they needed law enforcement.
I have some questions about the Turtle program. What's the initial program cost?
Currently, we're spending, I think, approximately $85,000 on the Turtle program.
And part of the director's position is to go in the schools and educate. I want to see a detailed, if we're going to spend $210,000 on this Turtle program, I want to see exactly what we're going to be getting for
Yes,
our
ma'am.
money.
Yeah.
Very
The,
detailed.
yeah, the 85,000 is DEP required because of our seawall situation. So we have to spend that. Those are the people that actually walk and, and tag the nest and all that. It's kind of the operational. The other group is the education group, which, is needed.
And,
So.
and it is needed because, I mean, that's the number one thing that we're hearing from people on the beach is they didn't know, or, when we're talking to our bed tax collectors, same thing. So I think it's crucial that we get that word out. And I've been talking with some of the bed tax collectors just
Okay.
in my first
Yeah.
few months here. So I think that's something that we definitely need to make an effort working on.
Okay.
But
thank
I
you.
agree with Cecilia. We pay for them to put education in the schools.
Who do we pay?
Out of
to
the
do that?
85,000, that's part of that job
The
description.
Turtle Watch.
They're not doing it. They are not doing it. They are not doing it. That's why this group formed
I
to
want
do it.
proof of either they're doing it or not doing it. If they're not doing it, then
They're not doing it.
we
We
don't
can,
pay
we can
them.
do an audit of what is
Yeah.
the scope and what is being provided under that scope.
Yeah, they're not doing it because I've spoken with a number of people, but that's a good discussion to have for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Madam Chair, yeah, Melissa, I'd like to go back for just a second. On this coming January 1st, the federal regulations changed the description between exempt and non-exempt. Does your budget factor in that change? Okay.
Yeah, the change was twofold. It raised the minimum salary that a person has to earn before they can be exempt, and it changed some of the requirements for qualifications for being exempt. For instance, in my office, everybody was exempt, but when the new regulations go into effect, only 3 of us will be exempt, 3 of the 7.
Madam Chair, if I may make a couple of comments. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. If you recall, last year we budgeted a $500,000 to begin the process of redesign and construction of the transfer station and the landfill facilities. That process is underway. You'll notice in the next year's budget, there's not an amount to begin construction, and that's intentional. We wanted to get through the process and determine what those costs would be. We anticipate it being funded from landfill reserves anyway, so when we have a better idea of what the number and the need is, we'll ask for the appropriate budget amendment to accommodate those funds. Did I say that right? Correct. Okay.
And are we going to get to that this year?
Well, Jones Edmonds is now working on the process of getting it through.
We're getting older by the day. We've got to get this done.
You're not getting older.
You know, I mean,
And-
how many years have we worked on this transfer station?
Working on it when I was
When you were in
commissioner.
office the first time, yeah.
And the other one, just a brief note, under admin, you saw there was an addition of 1 IT position. If you remember, a couple of months ago, we brought to the board the idea of an I don't remember exactly how we termed it, but some help for Rick in the IT component, and the board agreed with that. We've been working through the job description process, but when we actually went back and looked, we didn't get a vote to approve it. So, as y'all know, Rick's out of town on a family emergency. When he gets back, we're going to have some more discussion. If we need to ask the board to ratify that earlier discussion and get this position moving prior to the next year's budget, we'll bring that back to you and just ask you to formally vote so that we can go ahead and add that and move forward.
Needed desperately. Sorry.
I have a question to Melissa. Are you? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Just about the South Walton TIF. Let's see. Last year it was $2 million actually, and $1 million was put in from somewhere else. So the actual TIF money coming out last year was $2 million, right?
We had the $1 million that was that incremental .08 mills that was set up the year before, so we did away with that and did the $3 million to
And
the
then,
TIF.
and then it equaled 3. So this year, I see it proposing at 28% of the increment tax from the increment amount, I guess, is 100% would be $10,600,000. So, you're suggesting that we put 2.9 through about $3 million into the TIF account this year. Can you tell me how you came up with those numbers? And
We kept it consistent with what was the amount that went into the TIF fund last year to kind of keep the projects rolling forward and get them just on a rotation.
okay, so the amount, but not the percentage.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
the amount. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. We went back and forth on the percent so many times this year. I thought it might be
Right.
easier to just start with a dollar amount.
Start with a dollar amount. Okay. 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 Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Melissa, last year I think we took about 200,000 out of the McKinnon Bridge project and used it on another project. And does the budget reflect putting that back in?
We do anticipate putting that back in, yes, sir.
Anticipate putting it back in?
It's in there. I know
Okay.
I've had discussions with Public Works, and yes, sir.
Because I think we're getting pretty close to maybe getting permitting to go ahead and move forward to finish that project out down there. So it's in your district, Ms. Jones.
And Melissa, could you provide us, or me at least, with a list of the grant funding that came in last year and just a brief description like roads, X number of.
Yes, ma'am. We've got a list of that, and I'll
Okay.
I can send it to everyone.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'd like a copy of that too, please.
Okay.
And
Any other questions, gentlemen? Scratching. Sir? Yeah, okay. Any other questions from the board? Anything else y'all want to ask? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment? Yes, sir, please come forward. State your name for the record and spell your last name.
Randy Powers, Powers. Madam Chair, Commissioners, do you mind if I ask Melissa a question?
You ask me and I'll ask Melissa.
Okay.
Let's do it that way.
The base taxable year on TIF, the TIF, South Walton TIF area, was approximately $11 billion. That's the base. The new number now is $14 billion. It's a $3 billion increase. And we're only going to keep the TIF at $3 million?
Okay. Melissa, will you answer that question, please?
For the current draft, we've gone ahead and left it at the $3 million to keep the projects that the board's approved rolling forward. Public Works has been trying to get on a good rotation of getting the preliminary work done in 1 year and then constructing the project in the next year. It's up to the board's discretion if you would like to increase that somewhat. Increasing that amount will impact everything else. It is all one budget, and it does impact it. But for preliminary purposes, that's what we were thinking is you just keep those projects, keep what we've got moving forward. That way 1 year we start it, the next year we finish it. And we do have, in addition to the $3 million, we do have some in Public Works that would impact the TIF. The engineer that is proposed to be hired in Public Works, that's a lot of what that engineer would be working on is the TIF projects coming up. So that was our thinking in starting out the budget.
Because we can only decide on the ones that we're going to do, go after the permits, go through the permit process, which sometimes takes forever from the state and DEP and everybody else, and then fund them.
And then in the next year you'd start the next
Then you
one.
start, and then the next one you start the next cycle.
However,
Can't do everything. Yeah.
However, we could roll a lot more of these projects out if we went and did a lot more of them outside, which we're looking at doing. And I think Randy's probably right. I think the grants that are going to show that are coming in for rural road paving probably exceed $3 to $5 million just this year. And so I think that the fire fund is being paid by the ad valorums, which is another $8 million, I think, or so. So I think, he's probably correct that 3 million seems a bit low for the amount of drainage work and road work that we have that's needed to accommodate all the proposed developments that are coming in and all the tourists that are coming in. So I tend to agree with that's 3 million out of a $3 billion increase, because we've got a lot to do and we've got to get it done, and the engineers are doing a great job, and they're on a program now. But just the resurfacing of 38 alone is a couple $1 million. And that is, we've got to keep that looking good, because people coming, spending thousands and thousands of dollars expect the road to be a decent shape. So,
Do you have a dollar amount perhaps that you're thinking of, Commissioner?
Randy, did you have a number in mind that you, based on all your analysis of?
100% funding would be $10 million.
Yeah.
And, 90% of, that 90% of the ad valorem wealth in this county is coming from South Walton. Let me give you one other example. And this is coming from an engineer that we all know, and I don't want to quote him right now, but 14 of the 16 miles on 30A have not been paved in over 20 years. My neighbor is Keith Golden. Keith is a retired DOT commissioner for the state of Georgia. And I asked him to look at parts of 30A as he rode his bike. He came back and said, Randy, there are some parts of your 30A that you're now getting into the sub-level. That's probably not the most technical term, but
Sub-base.
he said the sub-base. And he's saying if in terms of just surfacing a road, say it costs you $1. He said if you wait and you get into that sub-level, it's going to cost you $6. All I'm saying is 30A is generating an enormous amount of wealth for this county. You all know that. I don't need to tell you that. But we've got to do better than $3 million. And I beg you to tell Melissa to maybe bump that number up. Do I have a specific number? No. But funding it 100% would be $10 million. And you can take that TIF money and you can hire engineers to get these projects going.
Yeah.
TIF money doesn't have to be spent 100% on infrastructure. You can spend it on contract labor to help you get these projects going. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you.
Well, based on that, I would like to see, $5 million as the number perhaps, and that way, we can get some projects really going.
And can I ask a question? If, let's say we put in $5 million, and we spend it all on projects. During the middle of the year, let's say 6 months from now, can we come back and say, hey, we need another $2 million to put in this to keep it going? Can we do that?
You're allocating the current projected ad valorem taxes. So if the TIF is bumped up, that is going to come off the back end from somewhere else. There'll be $2 million in cuts from somewhere else.
Not just salaries,
Yeah.
the salaries.
But look at it.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Instead of 5, it's going to 3 again.
But look at
that
it.
would only affect it about $300,000.
Yeah.
So $2 million would be.
Yeah,
It
I think
would
there's
take
money.
into
There's
account.
money to do the COLA, and there's money to do this too. And I think right now the ad valorem taxes are paying for $8 million worth of fire protection, and that includes North Walton as well. So that right there is $8 million, and probably, I don't know, 80% of that, $6 million is coming out of the South to pay for that. So I think, it all balances out, in my opinion.
Are Are you advocating, Commissioner, that to take that money out of the fire protection and if
No.
we're going to increase the TIF by
No.
$2 million, that could mean that it would be an ad valorem tax increase, correct?
What, that or.
Unless you cut it
that's-
somewhere else in the
That's off the
budget.
back end, yes, sir.
How
No,
much
I'm
would it-
not,
how
I'm
much
not
would-
suggesting, no,
the
I'm not
tax?
suggesting that. I'm just trying to outline what all is being paid for now and the equity of,
So what are you suggesting we cut? I mean, what would you, looking at the total budget, what would you cut to come up with the $2 additional million?
When you look at the ad valorem percentages, the general fund program support is at about 8% of the ad valorem taxes. So, so when you take a cut off of that, you would basically be flipping the TIF with the ad valorem. You'd get the general fund support down closer to 5%, because it doesn't just affect fire rescue, the county programs. It would affect the clerk, the sheriff, the property appraiser. You've got all the mandated expenses. It would affect the $2 million would affect all the departments.
Madam Chair, as an alternative consideration, you had rough terms about a 10% increase in the property values. What about a 10% increase in the TIF, going from $3 million to $3.3 million? That's a $300,000 thing, which we can go back and look at some of the other things, but it would be a proportionate increase in the TIF compared to what we've been going through on the budget process and what we've been doing over the past 2 years.
Well, I might suggest we look at that. Let's look at then at what Commissioner Meadows said. If we increase it to 5, where's it going to come from? And I know fire rescue was brought up.
No, the only reason I brought up fire rescue was to point out that $8 million is being paid out of ad valorems now
Right.
to pay for fire and rescue. And that's the only point I was making. I didn't
Right.
suggest that we take it from there.
Oh, I know you didn't, but I mean, I just want to point out that somebody who has used fire rescue ambulance in the last 2 years, and especially 2 weeks ago, man, I was glad that ambulance was there and it was in working order.
And I do want to point out, if there is as much of an increase to the TIF, then it would be to also get with Public Works to see how they would administer that, because you really have to have sufficient staff to oversee those
You can
projects.
put the money in the budget, but if you don't have staff or you don't have people that can do it, do we hire our outside engineers, or, what do we do to and I agree, we need to get the infrastructure down there solved as quickly as possible, but how do we,
Well, they've got a pretty good program going now. I mean, they've got a pretty good program now. They've got it worked out where some projects are in design, some are in permitting, some are in construction, and they're just going to roll those, yeah.
It's working
But
well.
what I'm saying is that we can't afford not to keep the roads up, especially 30A, because that's where our tourist dollar is, and that's where the value is coming from. So we can't afford not to, like you said, we can't afford to let 30A fail. And our engineers have even told me that, yes, if we go any longer with that, it will fail and it will cost 3 times as much. So basically, you have to look at it as pay now or pay late or pay more later. So, that's the question. And maybe it's somewhere between $3 and $5 million if Melissa can work it out.
Madam Chair, if I might suggest that, we've heard the discussion, and certainly you don't have to make those decisions today, but if you would give us opportunity to work through some scenarios to see what the potential would be, we'd be glad to do that and
can you
that
have us
to
that
you.
information by Monday?
I can have some
Yeah,
different
we can
scenarios worked
certainly
out by Monday.
put some effort into it between now and then and just
And
get a
Madam
better
Chair,
handle on it.
if I can remind you, we also submitted for our legislative priorities requests for monies, both from the Triumph aspect of it as well as the legislative appropriations, and we've got in-line Restore Act money that's going to be coming up that can also be funneled into these projects down there. So it's not like that if we don't increase it, we've got no chance for getting money. We certainly have on the horizon the opportunities to get additional funding for this without busting our budget. I think what we need to do today, though, is we need to tell Melissa whether we're going to ask for a tax increase, which I would not recommend, or whether, as her proposal is, we keep it the same. And while it's not a voting thing, she needs to leave here with an idea of what the proposed millage rate's going to be for next year for both North Walton mosquito control and countywide ad valorem. And my recommendation for the commissioners to consider is stay the course, keep the ad valorem rate the same.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I don't, yeah, I think it's, leave it as is.
I can tell you from a staff position, the last recommendation we would make would be to increase the ad valorem. So we will work within the current parameters to see what the possibilities are.
Very good. Is there anyone else in the audience that wanted to speak to any issue?
Also, too, Melissa, will you run some numbers out, like a chart that shows if somebody's making, I don't know, start with the lowest level salary and the highest level salary, and if they're making that much, what a 3% raise would be a year for them and what a 5% raise would be for them?
I sure will.
Okay, thanks.
Help us tremendously.
Yeah.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? If not, then we stand adjourned till Monday at what time?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock at South End.